Hello everybody, this is GameGuru live broadcast number 6, in which I confine myself to talking very briefly and quickly about the latest progress of GameGuru MAX development. And I have a couple of things to show you this week. We do our live broadcasts every other Wednesday, and then intersperse those with sneak peek videos that has a little bit more production value. This live broadcast has 0 production value. In fact, count yourselves lucky that you managed to have a little musical intro. So I'm going to go straight into it. We're going to open the doors for some live questions. So you'll be on YouTube chat. You can type your question there, use a question mark, or use square brackets with the word question in so I can quickly scan through. And towards the end, we will go through those and I'll provide a couple of answers. And I will answer all of the questions in the GameGuru forum thread that I will prepare after this live broadcast. So moving straight in to the meat of this live broadcast today, I'd like to show you this animation that's been prepared by our artist. And what you're actually looking at is the new hands and arms of our first-person character for GameGuru MAX. As you can see, a little bit more realistic than the last one. So we really wanted to go for a certain level of realism. As you may know, we're using the new Wicked engine. And I was just browsing through the documentation because it's a pretty powerful engine, and I must be straight with you. We're not going to use all of the power of the Wicked engine out of the box in September. We're going to support all the things that we said we're going to support, but Wicked engine has a lot more gifts to give after September, and we'll be deciding which of those gifts will expose as features into GameGuru MAX. But one of the features that I noticed was subsurface scattering. Now, if you're a graphics aficionado, you'll know what that is. But for those who don't, subsurface scattering is the effect you use in order to create realistic skin. Because skin isn't completely reflective and it isn't completely absorbing. It's a bit of both. Some light will hit the skin and bounce off. Other light will actually go into the skin through the dermis and then bounce out. And as it bounces out, that light scatters a little bit. And that's why you have this wonderful effect of skin rendering. So we're going to have a play around with that. We'll probably won't be for September, but that feature is available. And it will allow our skin within the characters and certainly the first person hands to pop a little better. But I think these pretty good. Hand and arm models. The model and the texturing is done, as you can see. The next thing we're going to do is rigging and animation. Rigging is going to be the tough one because the hands are right in front of the screen, and in VR you'll be able to hold the hand right up in front of your face, and you're going to notice if the fingers don't move right. You know, if the thumb, the fingers, they don't wrap around objects correctly. So the rigging has to be perfect. We can't have vertices spinning off at a right angle and suddenly the hand, now it looks like some low polygon geometry. It has to look right. So we're going to look at the rigging, we're going to look at the animation, and we're going to take our time with it. But this is the starting point for the weapon holding. So the hand will hold a weapon in non-VR, so the animations will be built in, but in VR we'll most likely be getting rid of the lower and upper arms, leaving just the hand, so the controller is represented by a real hand in the game. But we'll know more about that as we start implementing the VR. But I wanted to show you the progress so far on the art side as to what we're thinking about next, because we have our seller, we have our zombie, we've replaced his animations with motion capture based animations, so that's going to look even nicer. Maybe that's a subject for next week's sneak peek video. You'll have to wait and see. But we wanted to move on to the interactive elements, and that of course involves the player. And how do you represent the player? Well, it will be through arms and hands. So this is our model, and you'll see more of that in the weeks to come. But the thing I really want to focus on, and the stuff I'm really excited about, is the latest version of GameGuru MAX app. So this might be familiar to you. It's I've taken the roof off. If I just zoom out a bit, you see I've taken the roof off because I want to show you what I've been working on. As I said last time, now we've actually got everything together. This is 64-bit, the GameGuru user interface and the Wicked engine all inside a single 64-bit binary. But I wanted to get cracking and start doing things that will start to make it look like a GameGuru editor of old. So if we go into Entity Library, you'll notice I now have entities to choose from. So I can select a barrel, and now that barrel brings in. Now that is the old GameGuru Classic entity. So I've effectively just dumped in a couple of the GameGuru Classic entities into the folder, and my object was to load and texture and bring that in so I can actually move it around. So let's just bring in another barrel, hold down shift, and I can put a few of these barrels down. You'll also notice that as I move the barrel around, it's casting multiple shadows, and it's being affected in real time by all the lighting, so it gets a little bit sort of volumetric off in the distance. It plays to the rules of all the lighting that's currently in the scene. And we'll just add in a rock, a nice big rock. So stick one in there. You can see the light is being affected from each side. Now I must do a little codicil here that these objects are not finely tuned for the PBR yet. The table, the shelves, the walls, the floor, that's using all the proper subtle new assets. This big rock, these barrels, I'll drop in say a sandbag. So rotate that round. So this sandbag here, these are the old GameGuru Classic entities. So they do have some PBR, but the PBR textures aren't in the right order or the right intensity, etc. But I needed to start somewhere, and I wanted to make sure backwards compatibility remains top priority. So it's important that we're allowed to load in the old entities from GameGuru Classic. However, in creating it, and certainly the code to support the importing of these geometries and textures into the Wicked engine, I realized that the current GameGuru Classic internals, it is actually quite convoluted. The number of things it tries to do to ensure that your object is textured and successfully imported and looks right inside the scene, it's a little bit crazy. And so I'm going to simplify that in the coding of it. So effectively I'm going to just put some rocks down just to keep the scene alive, otherwise you're just doing it a fixed scene all the time. So yeah, the idea is once we've got the DBO sorted out, which is what it's doing now, it's not actually loading X files, it's just loading in the DBO portion. So we're going to create a converter. So instead of having all of this legacy old texture loading code inside the engine, we're going to free it up. We're going to move it outside in its own separate converter. It will auto run. You don't need to run a converter or anything. When you load in old stuff, it runs itself through this independent process converter, and then it dumps it in a format that GameGuru MAX can use. That means the engine stays clean, and we can start thinking about the future and only keeping the things that we want. Primarily is the new PBR structure, which uses the surface texture, which is a combination of roughness, metalness, and ambient occlusion, all inside one single texture. At the moment, all of the GameGuru Classic PBR entities don't have that surface texture. So one of the jobs of the converter will be to create that as it brings it in. So let me just cancel that. Don't really want people popping up messages, which could happen, you know, this is live after all. So yeah, that's the current progress. As you can see, if I zoom out a little bit, you can just see what's going on. And of course, the next step is the proper loading. Obviously, it's loading in DBOs, but I want it to load in all other kinds of formats. So I'm going to start with OBJ format, which is what is natively supported by the Wicked engine. But I want to move quickly on to the ASIMP, the Asset Importer library, because that will give you access to the 20 or 30 3D model formats that I know you might want specifically FBX, which is not supported natively by the Wicked engine. It does support GLTF, and I could be tempted to just say GameGuru MAX can only support OBJ and GLTF and DBOs, and that's it. But I think that's short-sighted. I think it'd be great if we had a big breadth of support for many different 3D model formats, and then allow a certain amount of those features to come through into the final render pipeline. So that's still the plan, so that's what I'm going to be focusing on in the next week or so. So I'm just checking the clock, and as I promised, I want to show you a little bit of what I'm working on, but also answer some of your questions. So I'm just going to browse down the chat, which I can see and you cannot. I'm just going to scroll down to the first question, and as I said, I'll answer the rest of them in the GameGuru forum thread after I have saved this for prosperity on our YouTube channel. Lots of hellos and wish lists. I would gladly pay $100. No need at all. We're going to keep the price very sensible. If you want to pay lots and lots of money, you know which tools to use. So here's the first question from Synchro62. On behalf of Eamon Moses, will we have full access to the VR controllers from Lua? You already have some VR controller commands in Lua, but I think I know what you mean. Access to all of the buttons and all of the peculiar gadgets of that controller. News, we're going to use OpenXR, and because of that, there is actually a certain system where you map the actual controls to common actions. So we'll probably have Lua commands that speak to those actions. So your generic script that you write once will work on whatever controller happens to be out there. And there are controller mappings to then map those buttons onto those individual actions. So yes, that has to be part of our process. We're going to get away from any sort of inside hard coding and more towards Lua scripting, and you're going to need those commands. So I think the answer to that one is a yes. Here's a question. Is that Trump on the thumbnail? Definitely not. Moving on. God knows what that question was about. Luke, much better. Thank you very much. Digging, coming down, looking for question marks. So he has found a question mark. How will we import materials, and will it support DAE? DAE. Well, you'll import materials in two ways. One, the model may already have a texture, a material set. Those will actually be imported. If it can find the texture, here, voila, you've achieved your goal. But let's say you import geometry and it can't find its texture, it doesn't have any texture. There is then an option in the importer to select a texture to then map onto that object. Whether you get to control material properties, that is currently not been spec'd out. But at the closer I look at the material capabilities of Wicked Engine, I think there will be a need to be able to manipulate those values during the import process. So for that, I would say watch this space, but I'm optimistic we will be able to have some kind of material control. And DAE is a pretty common 3D format. I'm pretty sure Asimp supports it, so the answer to that one is also most likely yes. Finding another question mark. Yeah, here's a question mark. This is from With the Storm. Will it support Blender shader graph materials? No. There's no proprietary support for any one tool. We'll literally be importing in the same functionality what Asimp does. If Asimp doesn't support that particular aspect or attribute of the model format, then neither will we. But we'll certainly look at it longer term as we get these requests, and as soon as the feedback starts piling up for a single request, then it gets priority and we might be able to do something about it. Here's one from Mr. Creeper. What kind of game genres will you be able to make? Almost exclusively first person with a tiny bit of very simple third person. And that's it. For the September launch, those are the only two genres you should expect. Now, your clever board who can script in Lua can do lots of other kinds of genres, but I don't think that's the point of the question. Out of the box, with no prior skills, what can you create? Mainly first person shooters. So I hope I've been very clear and honest with the answer to that one. Question here from Kevin Hampson. Question, are the tab sliders changing and how they are displayed? I think yes, because on a small resolution, those tabs start overlapping. It looks a little bit cumbersome. And we've been so busy playing and adding and improving to the UI to then leave the tab sliders alone might be a little odd. So I'm certainly going to look at them, and then we'll see what we can do. Probably a better way to manage them and maybe clean them up and make sure that we use our space better. So keep an eye out on that one. I think that'll be good to spruce up. Big long name. Can't repeat it. Will I be able to jump scares? As I recall, jump scares in game industry parlance is you're walking down a darkened corridor, you turn, and then you've played a very loud audio file, and then you jump out your own skin. Yes, you can do that with a sound zone. You can do it in script. There's a number of ways you can do jump scares. And I should be using that technique myself, I think, in a showcase seller demo with the zombies. Absolutely, I'm going to throw a few jump scares in there just to see if I can get a rise out of you. Here's a question from Blazing Phoenix. Will we be able to customize armor? There will be no armor in GameGuru MAX on release. Not planning to add any armor. So customizing the armor that doesn't exist is also not on our feature set. You will, however, be able to go out onto an asset store and buy some armor and import it. Or create your armor in a 3D modeler and then import that. And you could customize it in the 3D modeler. Might seem like a get out of jail free answer, but that's basically the facts. There is no armor to customize. There's no RPG elements in GameGuru MAX. There'll be very few actual assets to start you off. The main aim for GameGuru MAX is you're importing your own stuff from out there in the big wider world. So the questions keep on pouring, but if I look at my clock, I have exceeded my quota. So if I haven't answered your question, I apologise. I will, however, answer them thoroughly in a GameGuru thread in probably a couple of hours once I've assembled all this video together. So that was it for this live broadcast. Watch out next Wednesday for the sneak peek. We'll get to see probably a lot more of what I've been working on so far and for the rest of this week. So until the next live broadcast, which will be 2 weeks of Wednesday at 4 PM BST, I'll say goodbye and thanks for your attention. Goodbye.